Michael Wacha is returning to Kansas City. What was our reaction to it? We'll dive into it in this edition of Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. You also can catch us on wherever you get your podcasts. That could be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, we're on Odyssey, and YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. If you're a first-time listener and you want to know a little bit more about me and this show, I am based here in Kansas City. I work at Sports Radio 810 WHB, doing some hosting, some co-hosting, and a little bit of producing as well. But when it comes to this podcast, when you click on this link, you know that you're going to be getting 30 straight minutes of Royals baseball. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. You can now start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. So visit FanDuel.com to get started today. Well, what a news dump it was Saturday afternoon as the NFL slate was happening. And, you know, we're only a week removed from the conclusion of the 2024 Major League Baseball season. But the news dump that we got was Michael Wacha returning to Kansas City on a 3-year deal worth $51 million, and it can get up to $72 million over 4 years. But for the most part, I looked at it as a deal that was very team-friendly, very friendly to Michael Wacha, and really a win-win on both sides here. I don't think that you can look at the Royals as somebody that fleeced Michael Wacha or that Michael Wacha fleeced the Royals because of what he's worth, and maybe the Royals overpaid, or maybe Michael Wacha got underpaid. I don't think there's any of that conversation in this. I think, as I just mentioned, it's a win-win for all parties involved. And you had heard us talk about this on a handful of episodes over the last few weeks in regards to this offseason, what the Royals were going to do, and more specifically, what they would do with Michael Wacha. Was he somebody that was going to accept the qualifying offer? Was he somebody that was going to decline it and go into free agency and field offers from multiple teams? Or was the third option going to be that the Royals were going to work something out before he would even deny or decline the qualifying offer? And it ended up being the third option. And as I had brought up in those episodes I was just talking about, I just never really had that feeling that Michael Wacha was going to leave Kansas City. The way he addressed the media after Game 4 in the ALDS, the way he talked about Kansas City, it did not seem like a guy that was wanting to go out there and test free agency, to field offers from multiple teams and weigh those options and thinking about uprooting his family again and having to move elsewhere. I think a really important part in this too that we really didn't talk about in some of those episodes is that he spent a lot of his career in St. Louis. So there was that Midwestern feel to it. He's not a guy that craves the big city, needs to be on the West Coast or needs to be on the East Coast. And prior to Kansas City, he had bounced around a lot of different teams year by year. I'm sure he was kind of done moving around to different cities, taking his family elsewhere and having to, make it work with another team. And why I love this deal so much is, A, you've now got that flexibility to do whatever you want in the rotation. You've retained your top 3 guys. And I was watching MLB Network this morning. John Morosi, one of the top baseball reporters out there, said, as of this point, find me a better top 3 in a rotation out there in Major League Baseball. This is, of course, before free agency has started, before trades have been happening. Find me a more consistent 1, 2, 3 in a rotation. Cole Reagans, a 220-plus strikeout pitcher, had one of the better WARs among all pitchers in baseball. Seth Lugo, same thing, a 14-15 game winner, over 200 innings, a 3.00 ERA. And then Michael Wacha, a guy with a 3.35 ERA through the most innings since, I think, 2017 of his big league career. That's a very formidable 1, 2, 3. So what I mean by that flexibility is now you can contemplate trading Brady Singer if you want to. You can also go with the option of let's run back the same rotation. I mean, this was a group that had the second most quality starts in the American League. Your 1, 2, 3, and 4 guys were all solid all season long. And for the Royals, I would imagine they want to have at least full confidence in 4 of the 5. I think they'd be willing to roll the dice on who their number 5 would be, whether that be Alec Marsh, whether that be bringing back Michael Lorenzen on a 1-year deal, whether that be trying Chris Bubich out in the rotation or Noah Cameron wins a job out of camp. Who knows? I'm saying that the Royals will have a little bit more trust in rolling that dice if they were to get a deal done like this. And that's why I love the deal. You've maintained your 1, 2, and 3, not just for this year, but maybe for next year as well, if you can find a way to keep Lugo in Kansas City. And unless he does better than what he did this past season, I don't see him moving on in that opt-out. And the Royals could also do what they did with Michael Wacha if Seth Lugo has another good year. Let's just work something out to give you an extra 1 or 2 years here in Kansas City and maybe finish out the rest of your career. But for 2025, you have to keep intact what was your strength, right? You want to make sure that rotation is going to be solidified. I do not see Michael Wacha regressing. I don't see Seth Lugo regressing that much. I don't see Cole Reagans regressing that much. So your front 3 right there, you know what they're going to give you in 2025. Now, if you want to go out there and entertain the trade of Brady Singer, well, that likely means that you could look into bringing back Michael Lorenzen, or you could look elsewhere and bring back somebody on a free agent deal, or maybe you give a 2-year deal to somebody out there that's a little bit cheaper in the dollar amount. But I love that flexibility aspect, and that's what they did in taking care of Michael Wacha right now. You don't have to wonder about, is Michael Wacha going to be back? Are we going to be able to get this done? And that's the best part about this deal. The next best part about this is the Royals went after Michael Wacha and got it done. Like, simply put, and we're going to talk about that in the third segment today. It's just a different era now. The Royals, as JJ Picollo said today in his press conference, one of our top priorities was bringing back Michael Wacha. And this goes back to last year as well. Think about when JJ Picollo said, hey, we wanted to do this. This is at the top of our list, or these are the top 3 things on our list. He achieved all of those things. Wanted to overhaul the rotation. They got that done. Wanted to overhaul the bullpen. They pretty much cleared out everybody from 2023. Wanted the corner outfield bat. They went out and got Hunter Renfroe. Wanted to get some bench bats. They went out there and got bench bats. They have set their mind to something, and they went out and got it done. And I also have to give praise to John Sherman of when you got an owner that's flexible like that, you want to keep Michael Wacha here, you want to give him that extension, here's the money to do so. Because there is that disconnect in Major League Baseball, at least with some organizations, of having an aggressive general manager or president of baseball operations and an owner that's not willing to spend money. When you are cohesive between the two, you can get stuff done like this. Hey, we need this, this, and this. All right, here's the money for it. And for Michael Wacha, I think both JJ Picollo and John Sherman knew if we're going to better our team next year, a big part of that is making sure the rotation is intact, making sure that we've got our top 3, that if we get to the ALDS again or it's a wild card series, we can go boom, boom, boom with those 3 guys. You don't need to worry about who the number 4 or the number 5 is. And another part to this is I remember at the end of the season press conference, JJ Picollo saying if they couldn't get it done with Michael Wacha, well, we would need to replace him through free agency. And I thought to myself when he said that, that doesn't sound like they're going to let Michael Wacha walk. Because if you have a guy who knows the pitching staff, who knows his teammates, who loves the city, why let him go and then try it again and try to replicate what Wacha did with somebody you may or may not know so well? Right? Like, I love the idea of Sean Manaea returning to Kansas City. Always have. And I do think that he's going to be more expensive than what Michael Wacha got with his deal. I think the Mets extended a qualifying offer to him today. It feels like he's going to decline that and then test free agency. But you can just get it done right now with Michael Wacha. Whatever you were going to pay to replace him, just pay Michael Wacha right now. Because Michael Wacha, by many articles out there, many reporters, many people who cover baseball, he was a top 20 free agent out there. So it's not like you're overpaying for a guy that wasn't even inside the top 25. I think there are tiers to this. You got your Corbin Burns, your Max Fried, and your Garrett Coles out there, your Blake Snells. The Royals aren't getting those guys. All right. So you go to the tier 1B or the tier 2. Michael Wacha is likely at the top of that. So you got the next best option. And you were never going to entertain those mega money pitchers to begin with. You weren't going to replace Michael Wacha with Blake Snell. You weren't going to replace him with Max Fried. You probably just go back and realize that Michael Wacha is the best option for you. He's the guy that you feel like is durable. You feel like gets along well with the staff, gets along well with the teammates. He pitches well for the ballpark that Kauffman Stadium is. And the last 3 years, he's been really good and very consistent, very similar numbers in all 3 of those years. So you feel like, hey, the next 2 years, we can count on them to do that. And then we'll see in year 3. If he's not so good in year 3, it's still worth it to have 2 really good years on a 3-year deal. So I absolutely love the deal. Love Michael Wacha coming back. I'm not going to toot my own horn because I feel like a lot of people shared that sentiment of Michael Wacha is not going anywhere. It did not get that vibe that JJ Picollo was willing to let him go, and I didn't get that vibe from Michael Wacha that he was willing to go out there and just field multiple offers from teams. He loves Kansas City. He loves his teammates. He loves the coaches, and they got that deal done. Kudos to everybody in the Royals front office, and kudos to Michael Wacha getting a nice payday in the age 32, age 33 season. That's still very impressive to do in this day and age in Major League Baseball. All right, we're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, there was some more news last night during this Sunday news dump, but this involved Gold Glovers as Bobby Witt Jr. and Seth Lugo were winners in their own categories. We'll dive into that next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to give a shout out to our first sponsor and our title sponsor today in FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And I've got my Chiefs crew neck on right now for one of my picks on FanDuel. I'll go with an anytime touchdown for Kareem Hunt. He seems to rack him up in his return to Kansas City, so I feel good about him tonight going up against that Tampa Bay front seven. So more news that broke last night. This was the Gold Glove winners, and I put this out on Twitter. You can always follow me at JohnnyJ_15 a couple of weeks ago. Might have been last week about when all those awards are going to be announced. The Royals also got word today that Salvador Perez and Bobby Witt Jr. are Silver Slugger finalists. I think Bobby Witt Jr. wins in a runaway. Salvador Perez should win. I feel pretty confident at this point that he's going to win, but I do think Cal Raleigh makes a run for it. Another guy that had 30-plus home runs, 100-plus RBIs, had the highest WAR, I think, among American League catchers. So he's going to make a pretty good run. And also had, I think, the highest WRC plus among American League catchers. So Salvador Perez and Cal Raleigh feel like the 1-2 right there. But Bobby Witt Jr., I do think, wins in a runaway for the Silver Slugger Award because he led in so many categories. I'm not sure you can make a case for anybody else at the shortstop position in the American League. I think the other finalists are Gunnar Henderson, who Bobby was better than, and Corey Seager, who Bobby was better than. But as for Gold Glove Awards, Cole Reagans and Freddie Fermin did not win for their category. Of course, Cole being a pitcher and Freddie being behind the plate. But it was Seth Lugo and Bobby Witt Jr. winning the Gold Glove Award. Bobby's first in his career, and Seth Lugo his first in his career. And I think it just adds another accolade, another trophy, if you will, another ribbon for such a phenomenal year for both of these guys. I mean, we expected it from Bobby Witt Jr., and I think what I love about this and rooting for him getting the Silver Slugger Award, I want him to rack up just about as many awards as you can because that's going to put him in conversation, if not maybe make him the leader in this category of the most complete season in Royals history. I mean, MVP consideration, probably a second place finish behind Aaron Judge. He was in the home run derby. He was an all-star, wasn't a starter, so that's a little bit unfortunate. But You have an all-star nomination, Gold Glove winner, batting title, right? He had over 100 RBIs. He had over 30 stolen bases. And then you add a silver slugger to that. Like, could you find me a more complete season in Royals history? I know George Brett has the MVP award there, and I do believe Bobby Witt Jr. will eventually get one of those. But to me, this is the next best thing, and just racking it all up, getting all the MVP awards or all the other awards that you can, and then hopefully down the road you can get that MVP award. I think another great part about this is going into next season. I think in terms of popularity and the Royals being good again, should be a no-brainer that he'll be a starter, and a starter for many years for the American League at shortstop. So those are other things that are just going to add to it. More accolades to his name. So Bobby getting this award, I mean, it's funny that I thought it was a runaway when I saw the finalists for shortstop as well. I have that scarring in the past from Rawlings and Gold Glove winners, because some of their reasonings for why they pick somebody just really don't make too much sense. I was pretty shocked when Juan Soto was a Gold Glove finalist in right field, but hey, it happens. He's not the first one to be in there that you kind of scratch your head about. But when I saw who was there at shortstop for Bobby Witt Jr., I said, eye test, advanced metrics, overall numbers, nobody really comes close to him, in my opinion. I think by far and away, he's not only one of the best shortstops in all of baseball, he's one of the best defenders in all of baseball. So to me, that felt like an easy choice there. But for Seth Lugo, I love the fact that this age 34 season has just turned back the clock for him. And he was one of my favorite people to talk to in spring training, and these goals that he had set for himself. And I wonder if winning the Gold Glove was one of his goals there. Hey, I want to get to an all-star game. I want to throw over 200 innings. I want to get over 15 wins in a season, and I want to win a Gold Glove, right? So to me, I think that at times we devalue a pitcher fielding his own position, but man, it can change your entire defense. How many times in Royals history have you seen a pitcher, get a comebacker and they throw down to second base wildly, or they throw to first wildly? No, you could always count on Seth Lugo to be nails and fielding ground balls, and even some of those extra effort plays, the swinging bunts or the bunts that he had to barehand and throw down to first base. When you've got that down, man, it can change the defense a little bit, because hitters will have that mental note of, if a guy can't throw down to first base, or he's not athletic, or he can't really field his position, I'm going to try to make him field it. And late in the game, or if it's a critical moment, it's first and second, a guy's laying a bunt down, you got to rely on your pitcher to make the play. And think about it this year. There were some bad instances where a Royals pitcher did not field his position well. We saw Lucas Erceg, as great as he was for Kansas City, completely decimate an entire game on one play, fielding the ground ball with his bare hand. That injured him. He throws wildly to first base, and that hurts Vinny Pasquantino. And oh, by the way, the Royals blow their lead. Do I think Lucas Erceg's bad at fielding his position? No. But there was a sense of panic that set in there, and he couldn't get the best grip on the ball because he just took one off the bare hand. But for Seth Lugo, man, how many times did he make a play you said, that's just smooth, right? Turning a double play, right? Having a comebacker, right? Fielding a bunt, fielding a swinging bunt. Those are all things that are valuable. And being a Gold Glove winner for a pitcher, that to me does have value still. Maybe not as much as winning one as a shortstop or winning one as a center fielder, where those are really high value positions for defense. But winning it as a pitcher, I still think is great. And it adds another element to an incredible year for him. He gets a big contract in Kansas City. He's made that transition from a reliever to a starter. He wins a ton of games. He throws over 200 innings. He's an all-star. He gets into an all-star game. And now he's a Gold Glove winner. It just adds another element to a great season for him, a great season for Bobby Witt Jr. I love it, man. I would have loved to see Cole Reagans get one too, but of course, Seth Lugo or Reagans had to win it. And I would have loved to see Freddie Fermin get one, but it was Cal Raleigh getting the Gold Glove award there. I wasn't too high on Freddie Fermin winning it, as much as I did love his defense and as great as I thought he was. They're going to give it to a starter there, in my opinion, than a guy that didn't catch every single game, or at least the majority of the games for his team. So maybe one year Freddie Fermin can be a Gold Glove winner because I think he's phenomenal behind the plate. And maybe Cole Reagans can win it next year because he was another guy you could count on to field his position. All right, we'll take our final break of the show. When we come back, the deal with Michael Wacha and what I still expect them to do has really told me that it's a new era in Kansas City. I'll tell you what I mean by that next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned in to Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. You can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Our last shout out we want to give is to Game Time. You know, it's one of my favorite spots to buy tickets out there. I'm thinking about going to some college football games over the weekend. Now, the Chiefs play tonight on Monday Night Football, though if you're listening to this, it might be a little bit too late to buy some of those tickets. Maybe you love going to watch football games in the rain. But if you're thinking about buying tickets, or maybe for this weekend or the next Chiefs game or to a concert, whatever it may be, buy some over at Game Time. I just love using the app. I turn on the notifications. They tell me when, tickets are really running low, ticket prices are dropping, they're surging. They let me know when a band I like is in town, and I head over to Game Time and buy those tickets. I just love to use it and love to surf it whenever I'm just seeing what's in town or what I could go to in the near future. So here's what you need to do. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off on your first purchase. Those terms apply. So again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It is game time. A part of the reason that the deal with Michael Wacha really excited me and gave me almost this boost of adrenaline and talking about this team and talking about the offseason, because I'll be straight up honest with everybody that after the season ended and there's not much going on, the World Series is going on, so you're not really in the offseason yet. Not a lot of moves are happening. The GM meetings, which began today, they were still a few weeks away. It was not the same, right? You go from the adrenaline, the emotional high of talking about a team in the postseason playing the New York Yankees, to now we got to look forward to 2025. And it's all hypotheticals. You're talking about, well, they could get this guy or they could make this move. And it's all just shoulda, woulda, coulda stuff, or if, and this could happen. All that type of stuff is fine. But I was hoping for some real news to break. And of course, I get that on a Sunday afternoon with Michael Wacha getting the extension and the Gold Glove Awards coming out. And then today, every single day I'm scrolling through articles and talking to people, seeing what type of information I can get just so we have some off-season content. And this Michael Wacha deal was an absolute blessing to have at this point in the offseason, because I'm trying to make my way into the winter meetings where we got enough to talk about, enough good stuff to talk about until the winter meetings. And I've told you before that we'll be getting some interviews this offseason, so don't worry about that. But with 5 episodes a week, with no games going on, we got to make sure we've got good stuff to talk about. And so what this Michael Wacha deal did is it gave me this adrenaline, because it's all but confirmed to me this is now a different era in Kansas City. And this is an era that I feel like a lot of Royals fans had begged for not just a few years. I'm talking decades here. And this goes beyond 2014 and 15, really since the Royals started their treacherous run of bad baseball. You just looked at all these other teams and looked at ownership groups and, how do they always have a winner? And it got to the point for a lot of Royals fans of just have a team that can make it fun through the summer. They don't need to make the postseason. And that's not what you should shoot for as a GM or as an owner of a baseball club. It should be, we're competing for championships year in and year out. And in this new era of baseball, we see a lot of teams out there have an aggressive owner and say, we're going for it. To see San Diego's rise from being a team that was the doormat of the National League West to a team that time and time and again is a favorite to win the World Series on the National League side. We saw the Phillies, and these are still bigger cities, bigger markets, but we saw teams go from they're mediocre to now they are one of the top teams out there. The Dodgers have always been pretty good. The Yankees have always been pretty good. So they're not really going to fall into that category. But for the Royals, it's not that you're asking them to be a top 10 spender, but spending money is now something that we're kind of becoming accustomed to. Aggression from the front office is what we're becoming accustomed to. This deal with Michael Wacha is something that we wouldn't have seen 5-6 years ago. We would have seen Michael Wacha pitch well this year. The Royals make the postseason. He would have declined that option, and then he would have walked. Or the flip side would have been the Royals did keep him here, but it was going to be way over what a lot of teams were going to pay for Michael Wacha, because you had to have that incentive to bring the player back. And to hear Michael Wacha today at the press conference talk about Kansas City, talk about the stadium, talk about the fans, talk about the teammates, that's great for free agency. That's huge for free agency. And you have a guy like Bobby Witt Jr., who's a superstar. He's now going to draw attention from free agents going, man, I want to come pitch here because look at that defense they have. Or, I've heard great things about the coaching staff. I've heard great things about the camaraderie within the clubhouse. Those are all things that are going to keep guys here and are going to attract players here. And they're going to look at the money involved, right? You see Seth Lugo, a guy that was a starter 1 year, wanted a contract, wanted to have another year, not just a 2-year deal, but a 3-year deal. Royals gave it to him. It worked out well for him. Michael Wacha gets the 2-year deal, and the Royals extend him. Now it gets out that, players are going to say, man, they really take care of you. They treat you well there. They don't just kick you to the curb after one good year. They value you there. And think about at the deadline this past year. They rewarded the players they brought in by going out there and making moves, making trades, being aggressive. And that resonates with a team. That resonates with a group of guys that work so hard from spring training to October to put that team in a position. And J.J. Picollo and John Sherman rewarded them. And now with this money aspect, I'll go out there and say that I think John Sherman does have the right mindset to be this club's owner. And it didn't really feel that way in the first couple of years because the Royals were still losing a lot. They were kind of feuding with the city about the downtown ballpark, and that's not completely fixed either. But what solves everything, what cures everything, is winning. And when you win and you keep guys here and you're aggressive in free agency, you build that support, right? This past year, there was a lot of excitement around the team, but the attendance wasn't really there. Now I have that feeling that early on in April next year, there's going to be a lot of big crowds because people are buying in to what this team is doing. They're spending money. It's not going to take 5, 6, 7 years of a rebuild. They've got Jack Caglione in the minor league system. They've got, top guys like a Blake Mitchell, right? A Carter Jensen. They've got Noah Cameron, guys you can start to figure out more about, know more about, and people buy back in. The fans buy into that. And even when the Royals were successful back in 13, 14, and 15, it wasn't really through spending money. It was through the player development. The guys they had drafted, years of losing, had led to more talent in the minor league levels. Now it's this different approach of, hey, we improved by 30 wins, and that was by spending money. And what I got from J.J. Picollo today and watching that press conference, this was at the top of our priority list or up there, and we're going to continue to build this team. And that's exactly what you want to hear from a GM. Hey, this is what we wanted to do. We got it done. We're going to continue to build. We're still looking to make this team better. I need a leadoff hitter. I need a middle of the order hitter. We're going to go out there and get that. And that's what you want from the GM and the owner. You want the commitment and you want the honest truth of, if you're going to spend money, if you're going to go out there and make moves, well, I need to have a sheet to keep checking things off of, okay, they said they wanted this, we're going to go get that. And they got that. We want this, we're going to go out there and get this. Okay, they got that done. And if they go out there and get a legitimate leadoff bat and a middle of the order bat, I think they can call it an off season. I really do. You can run it back with pretty much the same bullpen. You don't need to overpay there. You can run it back with a lot of guys you had in that lineup, but you had 2 key bats there. You could run it back with the same rotation, or maybe bring Michael Lorenzen in on a 1-year deal, trade Brady Singer for a bat. There's options here. But it's definitely a new era in Kansas City where that was a good season. We feel good about that season. But we're not satisfied. We need to continue to get better. We need to make sure that 1 year is the expectation. Hey, you win 86 games, get it in the postseason. But we're always building to be better. We want to make sure that year in, year out, you're invested in Royals baseball. It's not some dream season that you get once every 10 years. It's the expectation. You win 85 to 95 games every single year. And the Royals, through free agency and through trades this offseason, are going to try to one up or five up what they did in 2024. And with who they got at GM and who owns this ball club, I'm starting to gain more and more confidence that they just absolutely are the right people for the job. All right, that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. Thank you for making Locked On Royals your first listen today. For your second, find Locked On MLB as Baseball Guru Soli brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the offseason. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk about the perfect match for Kansas City and their leadoff problem. And we're also going to dive in a little bit more to some of those trade candidates that I read an article on CBS Sports. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.